we've made changes in our careers before, and you have to sit there and be smart about it. You have to think about it from the business side and take the emotion out of the equation. Then you have to factor in the emotional side, and sometimes they align, sometimes they don't. But at the end of the day, our world's constantly evolving. It's stupid to think that we as people and professionals in business don't evolve with it. And with that come changes that people don't understand. It took about 10 runs of testing with her before I realized this is literally the dumbest thing I've ever done in motorsports, is get in top of a dragster with no experience. So anybody that thinks they could just jump in a top fuel car, you have a death wish is what you have, without at least training for it.
I saw all the superstars of the sport when I was a kid, and I was like, man, I want to be there. I got to go up there, see how they worked on their cars, what they did in between rounds, and how they shuffled up to the staging lanes, went down the track and came back. When you get to see that behind, right up close and personal, that's when my mindset started ticking and going, this is my dream. How do I get to, like, you're talking about like rookie. I'm rookie. I mean, I literally lined up against a couple people in testing, but I knew how to race. I've been down the track. I knew how to the games and stuff like that. I was mentally strong there. And then we go up to our first race of the year. We qualify number one. Fourth race in, we win it. So
wow.
It was one of those fairy tale stories that you're like, wow, like your first race out, you qualify number one, 4 races in, you win. So it was
unbelievable
awesome.
story. Unbelievable story.
I think it was a completely different experience, but I think there were a lot of variables that I never even anticipated. And it really started early out of the box. Gene had a unique situation when I joined Gene's program. And the first day that I physically met Gene was the day before the All-Star race in '09. And I remember talking to him and laughing about, he goes, well, my goal is to finish on the lead lap this year. And it was so hard to not burst out laughing, because I'm like, if we don't finish on the lead lap, I'm going to be on suicide watch, is what came through my head initially. But the best part about that was literally 24 hours later was the race, the All-Star race at Charlotte. And we win the race. We're holding $1 million check together in victory lane. But the thing that I never considered, never thought of, and mainly I didn't think about it, what I'm getting ready to talk about, because here I had made a change from a top organization to join a group that had 2 cars, 34th and 36th in points. And we had to turn this program around, and everybody says, you're stupid for leaving. You're never going to be successful trying to do this over here. And here we are going from February, and in May, we win our first race together and win the biggest paying race of the year, $1 million race. And so the satisfaction for me as an owner and as a driver, and with all these people saying you're not going to be successful, you're making a big mistake leaving, to sit there and have that pride of, I did what I set out to do, and way quicker than I thought it was going to happen. But it was totally overshadowed by crew members that had been with the organization before we came in, that had never, and they'd been with other race teams too, but they had never won a race ever in the Cup Series.
Oh, wow.
And to see these guys in victory lane with tears coming out of their eyes, I was totally caught off guard. And it really reshaped my thinking about what an owner and what ownership was going to be like. It was like, it's not about me and the pride of what I can do. It's what we all can do. And it's what it means to all of us, not just the naysayers and what they're saying about me. To see these guys, that meant way more than anything anybody could have ever said going into that event. So to see those guys win their first race, that was a game changer for me as an owner, and really what ownership meant to me.
You told Kevin Harvick recently that the decision is kind of the decision to pull the plug on SHR is kind of the same feeling that you got when you found out that he was retiring, right? End of an era, and probably more bitter than sweet, you said. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, like I said, I mean, and And that feeling really hit at Charlotte when I went to the shop at SHR the last day. When you're in the middle of racers are unique individuals. We don't think long term. We're very short minded. If you win the race on Sunday at 5 o'clock, by 5 o'clock on Monday, you've already stopped celebrating in your head. And at 5 o'clock on Monday, everything that's in your head is thinking about how do I do that again this coming weekend?
Yeah.
That's the way racers think. So when you stand in a shop that you've been at for 16 years and you think of all the things and all the changes and all the hurdles that you've crossed and all the challenges and all the things that you did to take care of employees and take care of yourself and take care of our partners and everybody involved, you think about all the work that went into it and you think about that it's coming to an end. That's an emotional deal. I mean, 16 years of my life. I mean, literally a quarter of my life has been spent at SHR, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. I mean, I love the experience. I love the people. There's a couple in the building that I'm not going to miss, but I think everybody has a group like that. But I think it's always hard when you pour your heart and soul into something and you build it into something special with a unique group of people, and then you realize that chapter of your life has to end for multiple reasons. And the one thing that I think frustrates me more than anything is to listen to the idiots say that I'm getting out of drag racing because I like drag racing more and I have to spend my money on drag racing. I don't have to spend my money on anything but my family. I don't have to go drag racing. Leah does not care if we have a drag team or not. She literally was getting ready to retire at the end of the year, and it was because of the situation she was in. But I said, hey, if I could put something together, would you want to keep driving? She goes, absolutely. I said, I would like to see you keep driving. So I know her passion. But it's not, the reasons we started had nothing to do with drag racing. It has nothing to do with what I'm doing as a race car driver and as an owner now. This was a separate entity, no different than Eldora Speedway is a separate entity for us. Our World of Outlaw team's a separate entity. Our 3/4 midget teams in Indiana that we have, all these are separate. They all operate independently. No decisions on anything that we do are made for any of those other sides other than their own silos. So it's just hard when you put your time into 16 years though, and you sit there and realize that it just has to change. It's just, and I mean, I think, and I've talked before, I mean, we've made changes in our careers before, and you have to sit there and be smart about it. You have to think about it from the business side and take the emotion out of the equation. Then you have to factor in the emotional side, and sometimes they align, sometimes they don't. And but at the end of the day, our world's constantly evolving. It's stupid to think that we as people and professionals in business don't evolve with it. And with that come changes that people don't understand. But we're also in a society now where everybody thinks they have the answers. I told Leah I've been reading a lot on social media, and I was reading some stuff that came out the other day, and I was laughing in bed reading it. And she's like, what are you laughing about? I said, well, the funny thing is 90% of the replies in here from these people, they have an element of the story that's correct. Their reply, an element of their answer is correct in the big picture of the story. But there wasn't one reply by anybody that had all of it right and had the whole picture. They have elements and pieces of it, but they don't know. So that's the sad part about social media is everybody thinks they know, but they only know what they know. And they make their decision 100% off of what they know. And that's the way we're supposed to do it. But there's always more to the story than what they know.
Yeah. Kyle Busch came on this program and talked about how long he wants to race, and the world blew up after he said what he said, and 90% of what was said was incorrect afterwards.
Yeah.
Social media.
It always is. It always is. It's,
I know. Yeah.
From the media side, and everybody thinks I hate the media. I still have great friendships in the media with the majority of the people I've worked with in my life. Yeah, it's no different than when you were in school. You had all your friends, but there were a handful of bad eggs that you didn't like. Yeah, it's the same for us. I mean, it's the same for the media too. They have their drivers they like, and there's a handful of people they don't like. But I have great friendships with all of them, and it's been fun to go through all of this and read what they're putting. I found out a article in Speedway Illustrated came out today thanking us for 24 years of memories, and it's just all the different covers of Speedway Illustrated that we've been on, and I can't wait to get it. It was the first thing I saw when I woke up this morning was a friend of mine that sent me the cover, and it just makes you think back to all the times and the people that you've met along the way and what it truly means. But yeah, we can tell a story. You and I can talk for the entire day, and somebody is not going to get all the details right, but think they got it all figured out. And at some point you just sit there and go, why am I fighting this fight to try to tell everybody? It's like, they're not going to get it. Everybody's not going to get it, but you gotta respect their opinions and their views. And that's the great thing. That is the great thing that still today, as we're talking, we still have the ability to say what we feel about things and don't get penalized for it right now.
Yeah. Things have changed, to your point, a lot since the days of maybe me, down there watching you go around the Brickyard 400. You told Kevin that NASCAR's changed a lot, drastically different. How is it different? What's different about it?
Leadership more than anything. I mean, I had the privilege of coming in when Bill France Jr. was there, and Bill was a very unique character and a very, very great leader for our sport. But I think a support system that he had, I think his number one support system was Mike Helton. And that is the one person beyond a shadow of a doubt that's still left that I have the utmost respect for is Mike. Mike helped me grow as a person. Mike is one of three people that I credit being the three greatest people that have ever come into my life and helped shape me as who I am as a person today and as a man today. So I have the utmost respect for Mike, but there's people like Bill France that we lost. We lost Jim Hunter, and Jim was somebody in the media that absolutely had a great way of explaining to drivers, just like Mike Helton did, of why things are done the way they are and how it all fits in the big picture. There isn't anybody there now that remotely comes close. You talk to people that are there now, and you talk to officials that are there, and these are high officials in the company. And when you talk to them, it's like they're just trying to keep their job. They're worried if they make the wrong decision that they're going to get in trouble for it and lose their job. That's the feeling you get when you talk to them. The leadership is way different than it was. The direction it's going, I say this from a standpoint, I've been an owner in the sport, I've been a driver in the sport, but I'm still a fan of the sport too. 98% of the race fans have no clue. They don't know the stuff that I'm talking about off the side that are the elements that I don't like. They see what they see during the race on Sunday on the broadcast, and that's fine. That's totally fine. At the end of the day, if you enjoy what you see, that's a good thing. But for someone like myself that's been in the trenches, been in the sport for over 20 years, what it was when I started and where it's at now and the direction it's going, I don't necessarily agree with it. I don't necessarily like it. There's elements of it that I'm very disappointed in, but that's okay. Not everybody has to agree on it. But for me, that's why it's the right time to make a change. That's not why we're making the change, but it's okay with me that it's happening now because of things that have happened as the years progress. The charter agreements are a joke. And if people aren't smart enough to read between the lines of when someone like Rick Hendrick says, I just got tired arguing with him. Do you think Rick Hendrick runs his business and in negotiations just says, I'm just going to sign this agreement because I'm tired of arguing with you? Rick Hendrick's never done that a day in his life. So if people aren't smart enough to read between the lines and figure out what that means, then you're all missing the whole big picture all by itself. So it's just an area that I don't want to be a part of anymore. I'm a purist. I'm an old school guy when it comes to racing. I love reading the fans' perspective on all this stuff that's going on with 2311 and Front Row and a lawsuit and this and that. I really have enjoyed reading the fans' perspective because, like I said, there's a bunch of these fans that they're on top of this. They don't have all the details right, but different ones have different pieces of it right. And if you can get them all to listen to each other long enough, they might be able to put all those pieces together and really get the true story. But it's just time. I mean, I hate it. I'm going to be emotional at Phoenix. I know, probably won't show it because I don't like showing emotion on that side a lot. But at the same time, it's, I think with the fact that literally a week and a half later, I'm supposed to welcome my first child into the world. I think this is like a big book where a massive chapter of my life is coming to an end. And whether I like it or not, or whether I'm happy about it or not, it's irrelevant, but it's a chapter that's ending, and a massive new chapter of my life is getting ready to start at the same time. And, it's going to be a welcome change.
A completely different chapter. And you've had a share of all kinds of different chapters. And I referenced it at the beginning, but you are an all-around racer, and likely the only IndyCar, NASCAR, sprint car, drag racer that's out there. I mean, you'll race anything. You always have. That's what I always enjoyed about you. You'd show up on Sunday after racing on Saturday somewhere on a dirt track, and it was just normal. What's your favorite to drive? What's been the favorite to drive? And
Probably one of my favorite questions that I get asked a lot.
But you can't say it's like your kids because you don't have those yet. But that's
no.
Coming.
I think during my career and in the stages and the periods that I drove each of these cars, if I just base it off of that, when I ran USAC midgets on dirt, that was by far the most fun I had driving a race car.
I bet.
And mainly because it's a lightweight car. It has a lot of horsepower for the weight. And the great thing from a driver's standpoint is I had the ability as a driver to really manipulate the car. If it wasn't exactly right, I could manipulate it and not necessarily fix it, but I could mask the problem if it wasn't 100% right. But man, the nights that it was 100% right, you want to talk about something that, when you wear that old pair of shoes that you haven't seen for a year and you put them on and it's like, wow, that's that feel I was looking for. When you get that with the race car, there's no better feeling than that. And I think driving a USAC midget was what I really enjoyed the best. Every one of the cars I've ever driven, every different division, every different class, whether it's pavement, dirt, you name it, loved racing. I still love getting in new cars. That's why I got into drag racing. And, one of the reasons, obviously my wife's the reason I got into it, but
right.
I went from wanting to be a spectator to seeing what it felt like. So started testing with her car, realized, hey, this is way out of my league. I don't need to be doing this. And went back and ran a top alcohol dragster. Found out I really liked it. I enjoyed it. And then, my wife wants to start a family. Hey, would you want to drive the top fuel car? Not really, but if you think we can, it'll be all right. Right. So, so here we are. And I've been driving a top fuel car running 334 mile an hour this year.
I'm going to ask you about that. But is there anything that you didn't get a chance to drive that you would have liked to have driven?
I kind of joked around. I mean, most people don't even know I drove a monster truck one night at Talladega. They had four of us. They had four of us run there. I actually broke my back that night, and that was 6 races from the end of the season. And I finished the season that year with a broken back and didn't know it till I finally went back to Indy around holidays and went and saw Dr. Trammell. I said, hey, my back is killing me. And I said, I'm eating aspirin like they're coming out of a Pez dispenser. So, and he goes, yeah, you broke your back. He goes, the good news, it's healing really well. I'm like, well, that's great, I guess. But I don't know. I always I grew up, in around Indianapolis, and one of the tracks there that's really historic that has a cool event is the Indianapolis Speedrome. It's a little 5th mile track. And that was where I first raced USAC midgets. Ran with Kenny Irwin there. We both ran for Rookie of the Year there way back in 91, I believe. And but they have a 3-hour figure 8 endurance race that is absolutely insane and awesome to watch. And I always wanted to try that. Have never had the opportunity to do that. I love the V8 supercars in Australia. I mean, motorsports in Australia is strong. They've got a lot of cool racetracks and teams and drivers there.
You were open wheel. Did you ever think, gosh, what would a Formula One car feel like?
I drove a Formula One car. I actually had the chance with Lewis Hamilton because of Mobil One to do a seat swap similar to what Jeff Gordon did at Indy.
Yeah.
Lewis and I swapped cars at Watkins Glen. So, and I only got to run 4 laps, but it was a really cool 4 laps.
How was that? How did it feel?
The most impressive thing to me that I didn't count on was how good of brakes they have.
Braking, yeah.
And it's like, I always sat there and, we'd watch the race on Sunday, and you watch the start of a Grand Prix race, and they go in the corner and they wipe 2 or 3 of them out, and you're like, how does this happen? Or when they try to pass each other, they wipe each other out. It's like, how does this happen? These guys are supposed to be the best in the world. I can tell you exactly why it happens. Because the braking zone for those cars, because of how good the brakes are, is so short, and how long the cars are, they're so long that the distance that you have to gain in that short amount of time, percentage wise, is massive. And, these drivers are so good at maximizing the braking. They're not sitting there going in there going, I'm going to brake 20% earlier and just cruise in there and give this guy the opportunity. They're going to the threshold every time they're in a braking zone. So that was the one thing that probably caught me off guard the most when I drove the Formula One car. I mean, I literally at Watkins Glen went into turn one, got on the brakes, and got slowed down so much and had the the downshifts done to where I literally had to then get off the brake, get on the throttle, drive it down to the corner, turn the corner, and get back in the gas. So the braking was the most impressive part. But I had ran on the simulator and had made quite a few laps, and I was used to the handling of a Indy car, which isn't the same as a Formula One car, obviously. So I was used to the G forces and used to the corner speed. But to do it on a road course, that was an experience I'd never had before.
All right, G forces, and we've had Alexis DeJoria on this program, and she's talked about the G forces in a dragster. What'd you think when you strapped in and let her go first time?
Well, I went down. I feel like I did it the right way. I went down to Bradenton, Florida, to Frank Hawley's driving school. So I drove his super comp car, 6 runs. And then I think I made 3 runs in his top alcohol dragster in the afternoon, and then came back the next day and I think made 4 more runs in the top alcohol car. Went back again 3 months later, 5 runs in the alcohol car the first day, 5 the second day. And then my now wife, Leah, and her husband, or her car owner, Don Schumacher, said, "Hey, let's take you to Vegas and do a test." And in my eyes, I'm like, this is the guy that owns the car. It's his money. It's his race car that if I screw it up, it costs him money. This is my, at the time, girlfriend, and I think she likes me enough to not want me to be hurt. She's saying this is all right, so this is probably going to be all right. But I would say when I hit the gas the first time, they told me to go to the 330 cone, which is the second time increment that we see on the slip. And I thought I went to the 330 cone and I lifted at 220 feet. And I'm like, I thought I went all the way, but by then you're running almost probably 180 miles an hour in 330 feet. Wow. So it's crazy. Literally, the 60-foot cone is the first increment, and in 60 feet, you're running 100 miles an hour. In 60 feet, I can run to the refrigerator. I mean, I can run 60 feet. 60 feet in a race car, you're running 100 miles an hour already. I mean, that is insane. But I think the first thing that I noticed is wherever that car was out on the racetrack, my mind was a couple hundred feet behind that. And that's kind of a scary deal when you're driving a car 300 plus miles an hour at the end of the run, for your mind to be that far behind it. If anything odd happens or out of the normal happens, you're not going to be prepared for it. So it didn't catch me on the first run. It took about 10 runs of testing with her before I realized this is literally the dumbest thing I've ever done in motorsports, is get in a top dragster with no experience. So anybody that thinks they could just jump in a top fuel car, you have a death wish is what you have, without at least training for it. But it's super cool. I mean, there's nothing on the planet that you can drive that accelerates like a top fuel dragster does. You see Top Gun and you see them launch fighter jets off of aircraft carriers. Our cars accelerate harder than that. So it is literally insane what these cars are able to do and how fast they are. But I think one of the things that it wasn't so much the acceleration that caught me as much as when the parachutes come out at the top end. And one of my racing buddies said, "What's that feel like?" I said, "Relief." I said, because you realize you got a lot better shot at not dying anymore because the car's at least going to slow down. It still might hurt if something goes wrong, but you're not running 300 miles an hour anymore. I mean, it takes a lot of speedway really quick.
Yeah, like I'm really enjoying myself now. It's like with all the stuff that we have going on, from how our sport is kind of like is really amping up has got a lot of synergy, a lot of nuances coming in, from like Tony Stewart coming in, and you've got all these smaller teams that are coming in, growing the sport, elevating the sport, the play NHRA, where you can actually gamble in our sport, all that stuff coming in. You get a lot of new eyes and new people. Like we've got people we've never even seen in our sport showing up that's learning about it. And they're like, hey, this is our first time coming. It's the best time we ever had in our entire life. I'm like, what? And that to me is like a breath of fresh air where you see new people coming into the sport, bringing new energy and synergy and learning about it. And it's really making our NHRA drag racing new part of the family coming in where it's opened up to lifestyle brands and lifestyle people. And it's been pretty cool to see all these different people coming in and also the different partners and partnerships that are coming in. And I've been seeing it firsthand because they're walking up where we got a lot of new partners with ABM and just seeing how we're just growing and we're growing leaps and bounds in such a short amount of time. And the TV's definitely taken off and bringing the stories of all the different drivers in our sport.
It's a dawn of a new era for NHRA to some extent. I mean, you just described it. And, when I was growing up, drag racing, it certainly had its share of heroes and well-known names and, Shirley and John and, names like that. But it's really broadened to a whole new level. I mean, not to mention, obviously, the example of Tony, but could you have imagined that the sport would take on the appeal that it has now? And why is that happening?
I think what's happening in our sport is our sport for so many years has always been there. It was big in the 80s and the 90s. You know what I mean? Where you had the big Miller, Budweiser, tobacco companies were out there, big, huge. The sport was huge, right? And then it kind of take a hiatus where it got mixed in the shuffle a little bit, I think, because NASCAR went boom. You know what I mean? And for us, we've been like the best kept secret. You know what I mean? We've always been a second trending in motorsports in the U.S. behind NASCAR, and we're kind of been like NASCAR's like little brother or little sister. You get what
Right.
I mean? You know what I mean? So now we're starting to see it, and then people are starting to see the value and the accessibility. For us, we don't have to try to diversify. We don't have to try and say, hey, you know what I mean? We got women, we got men, we've got people of all different ethnic backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds, I would say. You get what I mean, too. And we never had to try to do that in NHRA. And for us, I believe what made our sport so unique, like what pulled me in when I was a kid, is that my dad and uncle were sportsman racers. And we go to every track, it was always very diverse. You had everybody and anybody drag racing. But to get to the level where I'm at, you know what I mean? It was just a little bit harder to get to that professional level, just like it is anywhere else. You know what I mean? You have to be the elite of the elite, and you got to put the work in, and you got to set yourself apart to get that opportunity. And for our sport, what did it for me was the all access. I think was what made our sport so unique. No other motorsports, no professional other sport gives you a GA ticket that allows you access into the locker room. Our sport does that. And for me, I think that's what really drew me into this sport and I actually saw myself and say, I could be here one day because I saw how to be there. Where I saw the Big Daddy Darngarlets, the Shirley Modownies, the Kenny Bernsteins, the Perdomes, the Oswalds, the Candys, and see all these people, the Dave Schultz and John Myers and stuff like that, and Byron Hines, a motorcycle, Bob Glidden's. Like I saw all the superstars of the sport when I was a kid, and I was like, man, I want to be there. I got to go up there, see how they worked on their cars, what they did in between rounds, and how they shuffled up to the staging lanes, went down the track and came back. When you get to see that behind, right up close and personal, that's when my mindset started ticking and going, this is my dream. How do I get there? And I say, this is how you get there. I got to be out and around it. And when the opportunity comes, I got to be ready to jump on it. And that's what the sport of Mission Food NHRA drag racing has done for me since I was a little kid.
But you almost had a different dream that involved speed, not the kind that had wheels, but your own set of wheels. You received an invitation in 1998 to the U.S. Olympic trials. I
You
mean,
know, like everybody gets like that story all there. I ran quick enough to participate in it, so that was the coolest thing for me, where I was coming up and I had dreams and aspirations to be a motocross racer, and I got hurt. I got hurt pretty bad. And when I got hurt, it took me to a different level where I was just like, oh. And then I ran track in college and played a little basketball here and there and stuff like that through high school, and played football. And I played every sport there was because I was always quick on my feet. So for me, I never forget, my mom still got the clippings at her house. Uh, I was ranked number one in the country in junior college, Division I JUCO college. I was ranked number one in the whole country for the 55-meter indoor dash. And she says, son, you were number one in the country. You ran a 6.27 seconds in the 55 meters, which was fast back then. You know what I mean? These cats now, they run 60 meters and they're running 6.34, which is blazing fast. They're literally running 5 more meters and almost running what I ran in 55 meters indoors. So, lo and behold, I probably could run like a 6.4 back then in the 60 meters. But it's pretty fast to see all these things that, through my lifespan that I was always a part of. But that just shows you my competitive nature, how hard I pushed, how hard I trained, how hard I work. And I've learned that at an early age, that you can have anything you want in life as long as you put the effort and as long as you put the work and time in. If you want to be the best at something, all you got to do is put more time than other people and you'll become that.
but there aren't a lot of drag racers coming out of Chesterfield, New Jersey.
No, but my family was out of Chesterfield, New Jersey. There's a lot of drag racers in New Jersey. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The state is very densely populated. We had two big racetracks there, Englishtown, New Jersey, which was our summer nationals for NHRA, and you had ACO. And we had Maple Grove right across the way, about an hour away in Pennsylvania. So for me growing up, there was a lot of racers around us, and I was one of many. But the thing about it is that I never like to get beat, and I never forget my dad. This is a good story, Jason. And my dad and uncle had a practice tree, which is the starting line mechanism that we use to launch off the starting line with all the lights. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And we had the first, one of the first ones. There were a lot of money back then, okay? And we had it, and my dad's friends and uncle's friends that were bench racers, and they had drag race cars too. They will come over to the house and they'll use the practice tree, and they used to bet like $1 a time, $1 a game. And I used to be in there. I was young, man. I was like 10, 11, 12 years old. And I used to practice on that tree all week long. And when they come over, I used to get my little change deal out, put it down, and line up against them. And they never wanted to race me no more. I used to take their money all the time. I used to take it all the time. And as I got older and I got in the car, people wanted to know why I was so good on the tree. It's because I was literally practicing the practice tree since I was a little kid.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Wow. You're a pretty famous NFL star cousin in Troy Vincent. And he was starting, if I have the story right, he was starting an NHRA pro stock motorcycle team.
Yes.
And you had to make a decision, right? Whether it was the Olympics or you were going to go where your heart was. You remember that?
I remember. I remember that like yesterday, where I had to make that decision where it was either I had a 2-year scholarship to almost any Division I college I wanted to go to, so I could continue my career and run track and field and do all the stuff that I want to do. But my dream, you got to remember, I got hurt real bad. It took me away from motocross racing. My dream was to race. You know what I mean? And that was my dream. You know what I mean? Was to race. And I was just like, man, I got 2 more years left of college, and now I finished my JUCO deal. I had my associate degree in business administration, and I was like, what do I want to do? I said, and I had a deal to train with Chris Carter, who was the head coach of LIU, uh, Long Island University up in New York. He actually just ran in the '96 Olympics, and he got a gold medal in the 4x100 meter relay team. He didn't run it individually. He was on the relay team, and he won a gold medal. And I was like, I get to train with him. I could train with Chris.
Mhm.
I could train with him. And then I said that would have been really, really good and awesome to do that. And then I was just like, man, what can I do? And that was a hard decision. But then I looked at Troy and I was like, man, I go talk to my mom about it. My mom goes, well, you do what you want to do, Bubby. And I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna go racing. My dad was all in. He's a racing nut. Like he eats, sleeps, and breathes drag racing still to this day. Him and my uncle still bracket race. So
He was a club
so
racer, right? Your dad?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. They bracket race, like they sportsman race. So
Yep.
so they race all the sportsman categories still to this day. And I was just like, man, what am I gonna do? And and I decided to make that move and make that change. So that's where it all started.
The rest was history. Um, the shift to Top Fuel. Tell me a little bit about that. Getting into Top Fuel.
The shift to top fuel for me was just to like literally like it's something I always wanted to do, that I always dreamed about. And I was just like, man, how can I get there? And I was racing bikes for 10 years of racing pro stock motorcycles. It took me 7 years for somebody to finally give me a shot to do it.
And
It wasn't
overnight
something that happened.
transformation
It
that took
wasn't something
7
that
years.
happened overnight.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean? So it wasn't something that happened overnight. And then when I got the opportunity to do it, it was like I never forget. It was with Lee Beard, and he was the GM, and he's also was the crew chief of one of the teams at David Powers Racing. And me and him were talking in the airport one day. He goes, "Well, I'm gonna talk to David about it. Antron, this is what you want to do. I think you'll be great for the sport. You'll be great if we move up to the premier class." Because he just liked he told me, this is Lee's words. He told me he liked my work ethic because I raced motorcycles. He saw me in the shop early in the morning. And even when they left, I was still here working. I never stopped because I was all in. And he goes, with that, and he saw my eagerness to learn and my willingness to learn, that he said that I could be a great racer, a race top fuel driver one day. And he believed in that. And he thought that just the way I represented at the time, I was racing for the US Army on pro stock motorcycle. I was representing one of the biggest organizations in the world. And he goes, man, you'll be great. We need to put you in a top fuel car. You need to be in top fuel or funny car. You need to be one of the elite categories in NHRA drag racing. And he goes, you're already a star in sport, AB. He goes, but you're going to be a big star in sport. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I'm learning as I go and thinking about it. And I'm just like, man, it's like, you think I could do it? You know what I mean? Because you got to remember, I'm going from a motorcycle to a land rocket that travels over 330 plus miles an hour. And it's like that's a big deal. Like, you know what I mean? I'm going 200 miles an hour on two wheels, but going another 130 miles an hour, that's a whole different story. So I trusted in him, and I knew that it wasn't going to be from a lack of effort for me. So that's how it really took off for me. And the transition for me it was very fast. A lot of people don't understand that, Jason. It happened for me very, very, very fast, where a lot of people do it in years. Okay. When the Whit Bazemore left the team, like it was a falling out deal. And I was in the wings where they were shopping me just to get a sponsor to start a third car. It was going to be a 3-car team. It was Hot Rod Fuller, Whit Bazemore, myself, and I was a prodigy in the making, just learning as we go. And they're going to search out sponsorship and market me out and put a car together. Well, lo and behold, Whit left the team, and David Baca was the intern driver for the last 2 races of the year. And then David goes, well, Antron, what do you think about Mako? Like, I'm fine with Mako, David. Like, what are you talking about? He goes, well, I'm thinking about putting you in a Mako car next year. I'm like, what? I'm like, I never even sat in the car yet. And sent me to Frank Hawley's drag racing school. I got my alcohol license in 6 runs, which is about 70 mile an hour slower than a top fuel car. Then we went to Phoenix, Arizona. We were supposed to test in Gainesville, Florida, but that was a fail because we went down to test there for 2 days and the weather was so cold, we couldn't even get down the racetrack. The car wouldn't even leave the starting line at all. It was like freezing cold. So we just went the wrong week into Florida to test. And then the next time we could test was Phoenix, Arizona, which was 2 weeks before we race Pomona, the first race of the year that we have to show up at. I have no time. I don't have a top fuel license. You know what I mean?
Wow.
So I got 16 laps, got my top fuel license, and lo and behold, we show up to, like, you talking about like rookie. I'm rookie. I mean, I literally lined up against a couple people in testing, but I knew how to race. I've been down the track. I knew how to the gains and stuff like that. I was mentally strong there. And then we go up to our first race of the year. We qualify number 1. Fourth race in, we win it. So
wow,
it was one of those fairy tale stories that you're like, wow, like your first race out, you qualify number 1. 4 races in, you win. So it was
unbelievable story. Unbelievable story.